Man, I'm bored. You know what? Let's rank the tracks in,
Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing!
yeah, what he says. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. The first Sonic racing game. No, we're not counting this one. No, listen. Come on, let me talk for a sec. Okay, I'll be more specific. The first Sonic racing game where Sonic specifically drives on this vehicle. I have fond memories of this game. Hell, I owned the game like what, 3 times over the years? First on Nintendo DS, second on Wii, and now on Steam? Oh, and also I played the 360 demo if you want to count that. You know, I should own a copy of the 360 version someday. It has Banjo and Kazooie as guest characters. Anyways, since Sonic Racing Crossroads came out like a few months ago, I've decided to look back at this game and review every track that the game has and rank them worst to best. There are 24 tracks in total in this game, and yeah, I should probably mention this right away. Egg Hanger is not going to be present on this list, due to being a DLC track only on the 360 and PS3 versions of the game, which I don't have access to, so sorry Egg Hanger. Better luck next game. Literally. I will judge the tracks based on fun factor, how they look, creativity from the original game they represent, and other silly stuff. Without further ado, let's start with what I think is the worst track in the game. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a hot take or anything, but I don't really like Sunshine Tour. Let's start positive here. I gotta give credit to Sumo Digital for making the Samba de Amigo tracks in this game, because SDA is a rhythm game and the game doesn't really let you explore worlds, so you have to use your imagination on what the places in Carnival Island look like. All of the Samba de Amigo tracks in this game look really lively and colorful, just like the source material. I also find it pretty cool that in this track in particular, they emulate the whole fever mode thing from the original games into a trippy psychedelic portal into a different section. Okay, now it's time to be negative. I think this track overall is really mid. It's a pretty simple track with no shortcuts or jumps whatsoever. Now, I get that this isn't the first cup in the game that's supposed to be beginner friendly, and the same can be said for some certain tracks in the Chow Cup. However, I will argue that those other tracks have way more interesting track design than Sunshine Tour. I think it doesn't help the fact that the whole track is barricaded pretty close, making it feel pretty claustrophobic to drive on. Another thing is that the whole Fever Portal thing is mostly just a straight line and doesn't really do much except wow the player with its visuals. But after replaying this track a few times, it just doesn't do it for me anymore, making the track feel like style over substance. And it doesn't help the fact that they take up good chunks of the track. Sorry Sunshine Tour, but in my eyes, you're the worst track in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Now let's take a step up the ladder to our first Sonic track in this list. Welcome to Turbine Loop, part of Final Fortress from Sonic Heroes. This track looks pretty cool with the machinery in the background and the holographic Eggman at the beginning. Hell, in general, every Sonic track in this game looks beautiful, almost like they are remakes of the respective levels on more powerful hardware. And yeah, that's all this track has going for it. This track is just too short and simple for me to enjoy, and the turns are barely turns, so you can just drive around them just fine without drifting, except for maybe like what, one tight turn? Turbine Loop is a part of the second cup of the Grand Prix mode, which is called the Graffiti Cup, and there are way better tracks in that cup. However, Outer Forest isn't one of those Graffiti Cup tracks. This track is based off of the House of the Dead. Oh, I'm sorry, it's from Korean Mansion. Curse you, German censorship! Yeah, the House of the Dead is represented pretty weird in this game. I mean, the main characters we play are from some weird cute spin-off game that only came out in the arcades. I have to say, I like the look of the House of the Dead tracks in this game. It's not as gritty looking compared to the actual games, but the tracks still look dark and moody and fit the art style. Other than that, yeah, I don't care too much for this track. I like how you enter the mansion and break through a giant glass window if you're in the front of the pack, but that's pretty much it. And there's a certain track that does this way better in my opinion. Overall, it's just a track that exists. The other House of the Dead tracks are way better in this game. Better than Billy Hatcher's Icicle Valley. Okay, that was an unnecessary roast. I'm sorry, Icicle Valley. Icicle Valley is the second track of the Chow Cup, and you can tell if you play the game as it's one of the more simpler tracks in the game. But compared to the tracks we already talked about, this track has a more smarter design to it, being the first track in the game to introduce shortcuts and doing tricks off a jump. This makes it a great track to come after Whale Lagoon, which is the very first track of the Chow Cup. And let's just say this track looks more cool compared to the previous tracks we talked about. Pun entirely Okay, so I know I said that this track does look more cool, but honestly, the biggest con I have with this track is the way it looks. I mean, it's mostly white and blue everywhere, and I know that sounds dumb at first because duh, it's a snow level, but hear me out for a sec. Now, coming from a person that hasn't played Billy Hatcher yet, man, this game looks fun. I'm assuming this track is based off the Blizzard Castle world when looking up footage here. But I mean, look, this level looks way better than Icicle Valley. I mean, there's an actual blizzard going on here. And this is on the Nintendo GameCube, a console that's a generation before the 360 and PS3. This is a track where the reimagined look feels downgraded compared to the original game. Also, there's weird flickering going on with the ice sculptures, but I think that's just the PC version being somewhat allergic to Windows 11 or something. I don't know, results may vary. Overall, it's an okay track though. Jump Parade! Wow, didn't expect to be on Carnival Island so soon. So this track is an obvious improvement over Sunshine Tour, because there's a much more engaging track layout here. There are plenty of ramps to drive off of to do tricks, and I like how in front of some of the ramps, there are 3 balloons floating up and down, which makes the player think on which lane they want to be in before they drive off the ramp. But I feel like this track could have ranked a bit higher on my list if it weren't for one flaw, and that's this game's trick system. Let me explain. So in All-Stars Racing, whenever you're in the air, you can press the drift button to do a trick, which gives you a level 1 boost. You can stack your boost up to 3 levels if you do 3 tricks in one jump. Each character has about 3 animations that has a chance at triggering. Keyword chance. That's right, you have no control in what trick you do in the game, and while some of these animations are quick, some of them take a pretty long time to finish. It's a con I have with this game as a whole. The trick system is too inconsistent, and yeah, this flaw really shows in Jump Parade. If you touch the ground while your animation is not finished, you lose speed, and it's pretty annoying how inconsistent it is. There isn't really any skill, you just have to take a chance and hope you don't mess up your first place position just because you messed up on one trick at the last second. I mean, yeah, you can just not do a trick at all throughout the race, but the CPUs might get lucky with their tricks and catch up with their boost. Heck, you might be playing as a character where all of their tricks are slow and you'll struggle. And come on, I was barely out of bounds. Outside of that, this track is a general improvement over Sunshine Tour, but it could have been better. Ocean Ruin, our first Seaside Hill track on our list. And I can proudly say that this track is my least favorite out of the Seaside Hill tracks, but let's start positive. I would like to say that Sumo Digital did a pretty great job in the graphics department for the Seaside Hill tracks. Now I believe Ocean Ruin in particular is the least interesting out of the 3, but it still looks good here. And I like how around the beginning you see the road slightly submerged in water, which is good attention to detail. Now for me, the biggest problem with Ocean Ruin is that a big chunk of the track is taken up by this tube section, which is mostly just a straight line. I mean, it looks cool with how you're underwater, and I like how in the middle of the tube there's this big ass jump where you can do a lot of tricks. But this is pretty much most of the track and it's really bland. Honestly, at this point, you should just make a track that's based off the special stages from Sonic Heroes. I mean, you'll at least have better controls. Another track from a series we saw not too long ago in this list. Damn you two, you guys better have a big comeback. So this is the first track of the Horror Cup. Fitting, I know. And compared to the last House of the Dead track, this one's pretty neat. It takes place in the sewers, and is that a zombie Hydra? Okay, that looks pretty badass. Is this in one of the games? Let me know because I haven't played a single House of the Dead game to be honest. As you're driving along the sewer, you have to avoid boxes and that Hydra looking dude in the beginning of the track. One thing to know is that I like that there's a big jump for you to do tricks around the ending of the track. There is one annoying thing about this track though, and that's the ridges along the road, as if you're going too fast, you can accidentally do a mini jump and lose control. This happens a lot towards the finish line, and it's pretty frustrating. Hey, post-editing note, I could've sworn I had footage of me playing as Knuckles and me messing up that turn multiple times, but apparently not. I probably was not recording myself doing that, so, yeah. But I feel like either way, looking back at it, it's probably best for me to just, like, drift while, tapping like the accelerate button, just like I was doing with the choo-choos. I don't know. It's not really a big deal anymore now that I think about it. Besides that though, it's a solid track. It's time to go gambling and bingo party. The first track of the Monkey Cup and our first casino track on this list. Bingo Party is a pretty looking track just like the other casino tracks in the game. In terms of track design, I like to jump off the ramp that takes you through the lottery wheel? Yeah, that's what that thing is called, a lottery wheel, right? Anyways, I don't know what that thing is called, but the only thing that's holding the track back from getting higher on the list is that it's pretty short and simple. Now, I wouldn't mind it too much if it weren't for the fact that this track is on the Monkey Cup, which is the last cup of the game that's paired with way better and more complex tracks. I also feel like the other casino tracks are way better presentation-wise and track design-wise. But overall, by itself, Bingo Party is a simple and decent track. The very first track of the first cup in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, Well Lagoon. Despite this track ranking lower than half of this list, this is one of my personal favorite tracks in the game. I mentioned it before that the developers did a really good job recreating Seaside Hill in this game, but I think it really shines in this track compared to Ocean Ruin. It's a pretty cool looking track. You have an orca jumping over and through the ponds in the beginning, you have a bridge where you must turn and try not to fall off, and you have your Sonic loop to finish things off. But the thing that I like the most about this track is that for the first track of the game, I think it's really well designed. It's a track that's designed for beginners where you don't have to try too hard on the turns, but players with higher experience can drift their way through it. Also, it's one of the tracks in the game that has a cross section, which makes it feel unique and memorable. Really, the only thing that keeps the track from ranking higher in the list is that it's pretty simple. I mean, there aren't any jumps or shortcuts at all here. But unlike Sunshine Tour, this track looks great and isn't enclosed with barricades all the time. Well Lagoon is kind of like this game's equivalent to Final Destination from the Smash Bros. Series. One of the most simple maps to play on, but one of the most impactful in terms of playing skills against each other. Rocky Coaster's another fairly decent track, and wow, that's all of the Samba de Amigo tracks covered in this list. Did the funny Maraca Monkey dirty in this game, huh? But anyways, this is my favorite out of all of the SDA tracks in this game. You're literally driving on a roller coaster way up in the sky, and that's a pretty cool setting. The course is pretty long and has curvy turns, meaning that you can drift and boost for a pretty long time, which feels pretty satisfying. And honestly, that's pretty much all I have to say about Rocky Coaster. It's a pretty cool track. But before we move on, here's a cool fun fact about this track. Rocky Coaster was actually omitted from the Nintendo DS version of All-Stars Racing and was replaced with a new track called Sunfair. This track is completely different from Rocky Coaster in terms of looks and track design. So imagine a 6-year-old me whose first version of the game was the DS version being really confused on why the thumbnail for the track looks like this, while the actual track looks like this. Why did they change it? Is it because of system limitations? I don't know, I'm just speculating. Rokaku Hill, our first Jet Set Radio track in this list. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about how the Jet Set Radio tracks look in this game. If you don't know, the Jet Set Radio games when it comes with graphics are known for their cel-shaded look, and in this game, this look was removed. I'm kind of split on this, because on one hand, I think the Jet Set Radio tracks look decent and consistent with the whole game's art style. But on the other hand, it kind of removes the charm on these cities. But hey, beat still looks fresh, so I think it worked out in the end. Also, for some reason, all of the tracks are based off of Jet Set Radio's sequel, Jet Set Radio Future. And I don't know why they skipped the first game, but whatever, who cares? So, how does Rokaku Hill hold up? Well, it's a pretty neat looking track that mostly takes place in the underground subway, and the outside has a sunset in the background. But in terms of track design, it's the most shortest and simple compared to the other JSR tracks, and this is supposed to be the last track track of the Horror Cup. However, one thing I really like about this track from a level design standpoint is that it has a shortcut in the subway section where you have to take a sharp drift to the right in order to enter the car garage. However, you'll have to go the regular normal way if you drop on the lower train track level. I like that there's a shortcut that rewards the player for not turning too late or too early. It's a pretty decent track overall. Wow, so this is a big jump in ranking compared to Icicle Valley for Billy Hatcher. Hey, good job, Billy. Fist bump! Billy, no! Rampart Road looks better than Icicle Valley to me, taking place high up in the sky with windmills and raggedy looking bridges, looking much more akin to the level that this track is based on. This track in terms of design is pretty similar to Rocky Coaster, both having really long, skinny and curvy roads and whatnot. Though, I prefer Rampart Road more because it has a shortcut where you drive to another bridge that eventually connects with the main one. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I can talk about regarding Rampart Road. Nothing too interesting to mention, just that it's way better than Icicle Valley. And with that, we are already back to Jet Set Radio with Highway Zero. Highway Zero is a pretty looking track, taking place at nighttime with all of the city lights. Unlike the previous Jet Set Radio track, there's actual traffic that you need to avoid as you're driving on the road, which is pretty cool. There are also satisfying turns to drift to and a big old jump through a giant tower. Speaking of this part, my biggest problem with this track is that sometimes you can overshoot the platform if you're going too fast, which makes me absolutely livid. Nevertheless, it's a solid track. Nothing else to say here. Roulette Road. Yeah, this track is the better casino track compared to Bingo Party for me, so it's a few ranks above it. This track is pretty fun for only appearing on the Chow Cup. Once again, it's a pretty looking track, and out of all the casino tracks of the game, this one experiments with the anti-gravity effect more. I mean, look at this map. Oh my god, this looks like a mess at first glance because it's kind of normal when you're actually driving. It's just that the background is upside down. Also, I do like this little twist right here. Again, I appreciate it when the Sonic tracks in this game add a loop-de-loop of some sort. Just don't, you know, make it your whole entire personality. There isn't really a way to do tricks on the track, but just like Well Lagoon, I feel like the design itself is fun enough where you can just speed through and drift around the turns and boost your way into victory. Added to the fact that it's a cool looking casino track. Treetops, finally our first Super Monkey Ball track in this list. Treetops is actually one of my personal favorite tracks in the game. The track looks absolutely beautiful, taking place deep in the rainforest with beautiful lighting and plants around the track. The Super Monkey Ball tracks honestly look beautiful in this game, and they're all based on Banana Blitz of all Monkey Ball games. I mean, hey, no offense to BB enjoyers, I personally haven't played that particular Monkey Ball game. I really like the track layout here. Almost every turn is a drift and it feels really good to go around and around as you go higher or lower on the track. Though, what keeps this track from being higher in the list is that it's really short. Like, I think this is the track in this entire game where you can get the quickest lap times, correct me if I'm wrong. Despite that though, I still really like this track. It's kind of like this game's equivalent to Baby Park from Mario Kart. Short and chaotic. Dark Arsenal? More like Bug Arsenal, am I right? Get it? Because I had to restart this track like 2 times. Okay, no more corny jokes, I promise! Okay then. So this track is a big improvement over Turn by and Loop. It's a track that is mostly skinny with nice long curvy turns to drift on, and hey, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? If you pay attention to the track's layout, you'll notice that the track is pretty much mirrored, which makes it feel somewhat tedious, but not really enough to bring it down on the list because those long turns where you can stack your boosts and speed through feel pretty fun. Though the biggest reason why I think this track is awesome is that there's 2 big shortcuts you can take with these 2 ramps that are on opposite sides of the map. If you have the Speed Shoes item and drive off this ramp, you can pretty much skip the entire turning section, which is wild. Probably one of the coolest shortcuts in the game. Shibuya Downtown. Now this right here is my favorite JSR track in the game. I think it's the best looking one in the game overall because the city seems more fleshed out and bustling here. The traffic seems more prominent here compared to Highway Zero. Though, I'm not sure if there's more here or if they just appear more in your face because it's daytime. Well, whatever, it just looks more engaging to me. And outside of the track, you can see the subway train speeding on the train tracks. Track design wise, I feel like this is the most engaging JSR track. I like that there's a section where you can either go underground or up to this hill where you can take a massive jump and build up your boost by doing tricks. I also like how later on you drive to a construction site looking area and you jump off an unfinished road, which adds more to the setting. Overall, Shibuya is the JSR track that really captures a crazy urban city in my opinion. Thunderdeck is a pretty awesome track, and it's the very last track that players will race on in the last cup of the game, that being the Monkey Cup. No, seriously, that's the last cup name of the game. This is the best Eggman track in the entire game in my opinion. It has the most engaging track design with it being longer, more unique turns making it have a more complex track design, and that iconic Sonic loop-de-loops, hell freaking yes! I also like the part in the track where you can either go left or right, or you can take the ramp in the middle at the right time to avoid the laser. But yeah, Thunderdeck is a pretty awesome track. We're back at the casino with Pinball Highway, and yeah, this is the best casino track in the game for me. There's a way more interesting track design, it looks the coolest compared to the other casino tracks in my opinion. This track compared to Bingo Party explores the anti-gravity design a little bit more, and it feels like there are more tighter turns than Bingo Party, despite that track appearing way later in the Grand Prix mode. I also like the pinball motif where you go into a giant tube like a pinball that, you know, doesn't take up the whole track. Okay, that's the second time I diss Ocean Ruin. Let me stop being a bully. This tube leads to a giant pinball table, and man, I am getting some pretty serious deja vu here. Like I've been here before, like I raced on a pinball table before, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Pinball Highway is a pretty awesome track. And now, it's time for my top 5 best tracks in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing in order. We have come a long way, but now we are getting towards the home stretch of peak track design. Monkey Target takes the 5th place spot, and I gotta say, I don't remember younger me liking this track all that much for some reason, but after recently playing it, this is a pretty awesome track. It's the most interesting looking track in terms of what the source material that they are basing it off of, which is the Monkey Target minigame from the Monkey Ball series. I mean, look at this. How do you make a racetrack out of islands with circles? Well, the folks at Sumo Digital managed to make it happen with a pirate theme with bridges that connect the targets. It fits pretty damn well and feels natural. Gotta give props to Sumo Digital here. The track design is also pretty cool. You start off by driving off a long ramp filled with boost pads and drive off it into the air where you can do multiple tricks. There are many tight turns, especially these turns right here. Holy crap, they really weren't playing around. These are the only turns in the game where you actually have to slow down while drifting. Now, originally, I was gonna take points off for the track having a giant screw you moment for players that don't know any better, but then I realized that one of the things that Sonic says in the loading screens by chance is actually about how you might have to slow down in some sharper turns. So, I guess I'll let it slide for now, at least the game says something. And plus, once you eventually learn how to handle these sharp turns, you feel like a badass for tackling a pretty tough obstacle. That's how you make a track for the last cup in the entire game. We have Deadly Route at the 4th place spot, and this is a massive comeback from the previous House of the Dead tracks that we covered on this video. This track has some pretty tight and satisfying turns to drift on, and not only that, but this track also has some pretty awesome and dynamic design. We start by driving to a tower where you drive up to the highest point, and then you land on a slightly tilted roof, and then after that, you fall through a glass ceiling window which takes us to a creepy lavatory. Going back to this big window, I really like the attention to detail on how instead of breaking the whole thing like the previous House of the Dead track, you only break parts of it, and whenever I'm at my 2nd or 3rd lap, I try to challenge myself to break the other parts. They cooked really hard on this track, and it's definitely the best House of the Dead track in my eyes. 。
My eyes. 。
We have Deadly Route at the 3rd place spot, and this is a massive comeback from the previous House of the Dead tracks that we covered on this video. This track has some pretty tight and satisfying turns to drift on, and not only that, but this track also has some pretty awesome and dynamic design.
My eyes.
We have Lava Lair taking the bronze prize. The best Billy Hatcher track in my opinion. This is the only Billy Hatcher track in the entire game that takes place in a different setting, which is Dino Mountain, one of the worlds in the original game. I gotta say, this is a beautiful looking track. I feel like Sumo Digital did Dino Mountain better justice in this game than the other Billy Hatcher tracks in terms of remaking the setting. But my most favorite thing about this track is the track design. You're pretty much racing around every nook and cranny of the volcano. The track is on the sides of the volcano, the inside of the volcano, and my favorite part, driving downhill of the volcano. You forgot into the butt crack of the volcano. Ah yes, that part was very disturbing. Wait, I don't know who you are, get off my hat! Lava Lair is a pretty dynamic and long track. But screw this jump, man. Holy crap, this part sucks. I either overshoot my jump or undershoot my jump where I'm like, oh, I just need to slow down. Like, come on, man, this part's the only part that sucks about this track. Okay, that's honestly all I have to say. I just need to get that out of the way. But despite this part, pretty much everything else about this track is awesome to the point that it overshadows those platforms. So you're still great in my eyes, Lava Lair. At second place we have Lost Palace, and man what a fantastic course. This track is the best looking out of all of the Seaside Hill tracks. It looks like it takes a little bit of inspiration from Ocean Palace, which is the second act of Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes. And with a great setting, you add that with a pretty great track layout. You have a big open area with a lake, a big jump that takes you to the ancient ruins of Seaside Hill. This track is basically Well Lagoon but with much more, which is pretty awesome. A beautiful looking track mixed with a pretty superb design. That's how you make a great racetrack. But it's not the best track in my book. This next track in my opinion is not only my personal favorite in the game, but I think it deserves the #1 spot. For not only being the best designed track, but for doing some stuff that none of the other tracks I talk about do. Here it is, the best track in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Now, if you have a keen eye or if you already played this game, you would know by now that so far, we have only talked about 2 tracks from the Super Monkey Ball franchise, and each Sega series has about 3 tracks each. Well, outside of Sonic because... well, here we go. It's finally time to talk about Sandy Drifts. This track is the best track in the game for me, bar none. So let's take a deep dive into it. First and foremost, I really like the way this track looks. For context, this track is based on the world in Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz for the Wii. The world is called Detritus Desert and it looks like this. Now, in terms of what Sumo Digital has done in terms of remaking these levels for this game, they've overall did a pretty good job. I think this track is one of the best that they've done in terms of remaking the settings and environments. Like, they turned this into this. What a massive glow up. They gave Detritus Desert more personality by adding a more colorful checkerboard pattern and some rotating gears here and there, having a clockwork-like vibe to it. They did something different, it fits rather well. They made a desert level look awesome, and that's a lot coming from me because I usually think desert levels in video games look pretty boring. Hey, Anakin Skywalker was right.
Say the line, Bart!
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not only does the track look good, but the design of it is, oh my god, it's amazing! Sandy Drifts is one of the trickier tracks in the game as you have to take really sharp turns to the point where you have to let go of the gas button a bit if you're going too fast. Think of it as treetops but more harder. Speaking of those turns, I really like the crisscross sections here. Will Lagoon has something similar, but here they have multiple lower levels, and if you're fast enough, you can drive over one of the platform's barricades and skip to one of the lower levels, serving as a shortcut of some sorts. I also really like these 2 roads with the hills that make you go. You can actually drive off the hills at the highest apex, then do some tricks while you're at it. I mean, I'm not sure if it makes you go slower or faster, but come on, it's fun for style points. Due to these parts that I've mentioned, I feel like out of all of the tracks in the game, this track is the one that supports the player on how they want to go about racing on it the most. Whether that's intentional on Sumo Digital's part or not, it doesn't matter. I just think that it's cool you can do these stuff. Oh, and also one more thing, I like the part with the big boost ramp where instead of jumping off the ramp and trying to land on the road like the other tracks in the game, this one, it's like you're going high up into the sky instead of like, falling down, if that makes any sense. But yeah, only track that I remember that actually does that. Well, why am I whispering currently? I don't know, this isn't like some type of post-edit stuff. I just did it because it's fun. Overall, for being one of the best looking tracks of the game, alongside one of the most funnest tracks to race on, Sandy Drifts, I declare you as the best track in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. And that was my ranking of every track in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Am I based? Am I a menace to society and that I should abandon all hope? Let me know in the comments below. This is the first time I've ever made a ranking video of this nature, so I hope I don't come across as hypocritical or contradictory of my points. But yeah, thank you all for watching this silly little video I made, and take care, take a shower, do your exercises, eat your greens, and do your work, dude. I know you're slacking off by watching this video.